I was reading a book by W.S. Merwin. What's it called? Floating Clouds. What was the name of the book? Folding Cliffs, a 19th century narrative of Hawaii, which is this big book with a poem a page, and it's a novel in verse. And he was writing about the 19th century Hawaii, which is colonialization and the beginnings of leprosy that came in through the Chinese workers in Hawaii, and how the colonial governments use leprosy to rip apart the population by forcing them into Molokai, the big leper colony, and splitting apart families and splitting apart communities, which for them they did not just to isolate an illness, but also to be able to control the communities by ripping them apart this way. So it's like a double level of what these people went through. So I was reading that. Also, you have the story of the young woman who meets the young man, and they marry and have a child, and one gets leprosy, and then a child gets leprosy, so she loses her husband and son, and all of a sudden, and it's like, I got mesmerized, and I'm reading this book. Merwin is a fantastic poet. It's just, his work is so beautiful. And so I go and get there, and I'm inspired by this book. I was intimidated when I first picked it up, because it's a fat book, yeah. I still get intimidated by fat books, even though I love to read, and I'll read a 1,000-page book, you know. It's just like, there's something about it being poetry and continuing for that many pages. And I got it, and that reminded me of when I was a small child watching a UNICEF special with Danny Kaye, who was a actor-comedian. He was one of my heartthrobs when I was like 5, yeah, little girl. I loved Danny Kaye, and he was just this incredible man, and he made these funny movies, but he also went around the world for UNICEF and doing all these things, and he was also a conductor of symphonic conductor. And in one of those UNICEF specials, he went to a leper colony. And he's there, and he's talking to these people and interviewing these people. You could see, these people without any fingers, and some of them were sort of like shawled, and so you can't really see their faces, and all. And thinking, wow, and he's out there with these people, but a fascination. I think we have a fascination with illnesses. Or a lot of people do, just this fascination of what is that like, and oh my God. And there's also a fear and a revulsion to it. Ooh, that is horrible. Oh. But still you want to look. Like how people want to see accidents. And it's there. That's, remembering that. And so I'm going through these memories, and then I remember being in this house watching a special on Pancake Island. So having this vague memory of there being an island off of Cape Cod that had a leper colony. But I couldn't remember really anything about it. And I tried finding the film, and I could not find the film. So I, Google leprosy, leper colonies, Massachusetts, and I found a book on Pancake Island, written by Skye Buckley, who was not really a writer and didn't write a particularly good book, but in the book he does list all the patients that went to the island. When they got there were brief biographical sketches of these people. Also, the background of the island, from glacier on to sheep farms and Museum of Natural History that it was for a time belonging to Harvard before it was a leprosarium. And today it's a school for wayward boys, the Pennock's Island School for delinquent boys. And so I have this, whole background of the island. I know the size of the island, so I can I could visualize it. Quarter mile by half mile, I know that's tiny. But it didn't really hit me until I was standing on that island. So I was able to, and then through his bibliography, I could then go through his sources and get more information than I did while I was working on the book. So it really helped me there. And Buckley's book was a great, great help for me in doing that. Yeah. So then I just wrote down the names of all the people and looked up the people and started thinking, I am this person. I'm giving voice to this person who had no voice. And that's what persona poems do. You're creating, whether you're creating a fictitious character, which I've done at times, or you're using a person that really lived and loved and felt and had grief. And what is it like if I am this Italian woman who only speaks Italian and I'm ripped away from my family, I'm on this island? What is that like? Or I'm a Buddhist who speaks Japanese and was a sought-after woodworker, and I was well known, and I was getting top money jobs. And I worked for Isabel Stewart Gardner, building her museum, her house, and that's Iowa. That's him. And suddenly, he's having problems with his hands, and he goes to a doctor, and he's diagnosed. You're there. Can't work anymore. Your whole identity in life is gone. And you're with people who speak different languages than you. There's no one else on that island who speaks Japanese but him. I mean, there were 2 or 3 people who spoke Chinese, so they could at least talk together. And some of them spoke English, or degrees of English, and some didn't. I imagine over years they learned some English, but they had to relate to each other and be there. And it's just amazing. I started learning about the doctor, Dr. Park and his wife Marion. They were saintly people. They were just, these people were so lucky to have this couple living there with them, taking care of them. Because they tried as well as they could to make life better for these people, to bring them some joy. It was lots. They loved music, so they would bring in lots and lots of records. And they went through 5 Victrolas in 1 year because they loved music so much. And people would donate. Someone donated an organ, and so these things. So life was as good as it possibly could be under conditions of dealing with a horrific disease, being taken away from your family, your children. Some of these people were married with children and not being able to ever see your children again. And what is that like? And trying to put myself into these people's heads. And I couldn't do all of them. There were 36 people, and I didn't remember how many I did, but not 36. I just did, and some I just didn't know what to say about them. And one Morris, I really, really wanted to write a poem about Morris. He was on my list, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't get there into his voice. And one day I lay down and I was trying to take a nap. And suddenly, I was Morris writing a letter to his wife and speaking. And I was Morris speaking. And I had to get up and write that. And that's the only poem that happened to me like that, where I actually heard this voice in me speaking. And that was Morris. And I got his story from reading Dr. Parker's notes that he had. The Countway Library is owned by Harvard, and I was able to go there and see his typewritten notes and what he said and his description of Morris, and get that, and there. Morris was a sad guy.